in the meantime, I've got a cosy blanket that Phoebe gave me for my birthday, so I'm all right. I cozy up on that. I don't like sitting with a blanket. It makes me feel like an old lady, but I'm becoming less resistant to that concept as time goes by.
I had all my blankies on yesterday, all of them.
Welcome to Own It, Your Business and Your Life, with Nicola Cairncross and Judith Morgan. In this podcast, we're going to cover everything you need to embrace to become a successful entrepreneur, marketing, money, and much, much more. How to create a business doing just what you love. How to own it, your business and your life. This one will be fast, funny, feisty, and very lively. So sit back and enjoy the show.
Good morning.
Morning, caller. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you.
Good.
How's your life?
How's my life? Well, at 5 o'clock this morning, it was snowy.
No.
But 9 o'clock, it's all gone.
Oh, that's typical of England, isn't it?
So much so that I thought I might be dreaming it. But no, other people are saying it was. It was very, very, very cold yesterday. And I had 100 layers on. And I thought, oh, my God, the bug's coming back. Because that's how I first got the bug. It's like I couldn't keep myself warm. And then when I saw the snow at 5 o'clock this morning, I don't know what made me peep out the window. There's something about snow that tells you it's out there.
Yeah.
And I had a peep out the window and it was snowy. And I thought, oh, that's sort of nice. And then I went back to sleep and I just woke up again and it's all gone.
I think it's the silence when the snow falls.
Yes.
It's silent.
Yes, you can tell it's there, can't you?
Yeah, you can. Yeah, it's nice. I like it. But then typical of the south of England, I should say, not the north, is that you wake up again and it's gone.
Well, not always, because we've had some quite heroic snow, and I'm living in Kent now, and Kent is quite well known for its snow, actually.
Inland?
You what?
You're inland, aren't you?
Not really. I mean, it depends. I mean, if the Americans are listening, we're so not inland anywhere in England, are we?
No, that's true.
London's 100 miles from the coast. That's not really inland.
No, they'll drive that for a picnic.
Yes, quite.
Yeah. So what else has been happening in your week then?
Can you tell me about yours first? Because I've got this horrible problem I now get every week where I get these 3 windows up on the left-hand side and I can't concentrate until I move it.
Okay, I will crack on with that then. Yeah.
You talk about your week. I think it also helps us with the equalising or whatever it's called if we hear it from you at the beginning.
Temperatures have gone down this week in Greece. We're down to under 20, 19, 18, that sort of thing. And there's a few valiant souls among the local taverna owners trying to stay open for the winter because I think they've twigged that there is a resident population. And so there's one guy doing up a taverna so that he actually is a regular. He had a winter taverna last year. He had a summer taverna, and we like his stuff very much, and he's a very nice person. So we're glad that he's doing that. But there's also there was a party last Thursday where and it was outside, and after about an hour, everybody was popping home to get their thermals on.
Yeah.
And, so the other thing is that we went out on Friday night, Dave's Dining Club, to a place that N Kazantzakis. That's a catchy name for a taverna, isn't it? And so it was absolutely freezing. He had lots of plastic all around, but what he didn't have was the ubiquitous wood-burning stove in the middle of the taverna, which really blasts it out.
Okay.
And we all kept our coats on, except I hadn't taken a coat. I just worn a shirt because I'm always too hot when they got these fires going.
Yeah.
But but we're showing support for any taverna owner who's brave enough to open over the winter. Oh, I'm still waiting for my chimney sweep. He came and he had a look. He sucked through his teeth and said something along the lines of, "I've got to go to Kalamata for that bit." And then I haven't seen him since.
Yes,
so
he may be sometime.
That was Saturday morning. It's now Thursday morning, and it was only a bit of rope he needed. You know what I mean? A bit of insulation. So I don't know when to expect him, but in the meantime, I've got a cosy blanket that Phoebe gave me for my birthday, so I'm all right. I cozy up on that. I don't like sitting with a blanket; it makes me feel like an old lady, but. I'm becoming less resistant to that concept as time goes by.
I had all my blankies on yesterday, all of them.
So have you sorted out your visuals?
Yes, I'm sorted. I'll tell you about my week. Death, sorry.
Oh.
On Monday, it was a funeral for my cousin Anne. And Monday's a bit of a strange day for a funeral. And a funeral's always a sort of happy, sad thing in a way, because you're celebrating the person's life. And we went straight to the crematorium, which is normal these days. And I find a crematorium quite a weird goings on. I've written my newsletter tomorrow about funerals, and I didn't intend to, but I decided that, if I have another business in me, it could be about making a nice crematorium, because actually the brochure of this place looked nice and the outside looked nice. But once you get inside those funny little rooms, it's like being in a sitcom.
I don't know. The decor in them is so odd, isn't it?
Oh, awful. It's like 30 years ago, if not more.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's stuck in some era when crematoria were first invented. It's a very strange thing. Well, anyway, my various thoughts about funerals are how easy it is to clear your diary for a funeral, but nothing else. If I say to my clients, I've got to go to a funeral, they sort of evaporate. And not that they ever huff and puff if I have to change, but I'm a person that doesn't change very much and doesn't like changing. But and a funeral always makes you pledge to live your life differently. It doesn't last very long. It's a bit like when you see a car accident on the motorway and you pull over to the inside lane and you swear you'll never drive fast ever again. When somebody dies, you think, well, I'm going to clean up my act and live differently. But it barely lasts until you get home from the funeral, I find. But it does make you have those thoughts, which I quite relish. It gives you something to think about. But it was Monday, as I said, and I got home and it was quite late and I went to bed, and then I picked up my iPad and I got a message from Leslie, my oldest school friend, the Jenga bird, whose younger sister took me to the grandparents' farm. Leslie had been brought back from Chicago because her mother had died. And I remember when I emailed Leslie to tell her that my mother had died, which was 15 years ago, and obviously we've known each other since we were 10, so we know each other's mothers really well, because we were too little to be people in our own right when we were 10. We had, mothers. I've been to 1,000 parties with Leslie's mother, and she the same with mine. But when I emailed Leslie to tell her that my mother had died, she was in Africa, so she couldn't come home for my mother's funeral, but she had to come home to England for her own mother's death. I don't know when the funeral's going to be yet, but it just made me think how difficult it is to be away from those you love in their time of loss. So she couldn't be with me and she couldn't be with her mum, and although her mum was at the end of her life, I don't think she was expected to go that urgently. And I think there's always, even when you're expecting somebody to die, there's always a shock, isn't there?
It's such a weird thing.
I know it is a weird thing.
So weird. I've thought about it a lot.
Yes, I know.
And it's still, we are so far detached from it in our day-to-day lives that it's just such a surreal thing. The whole death, funerals,
Yeah, as I write in my newsletter tomorrow, I'm not so far removed from it anymore, because the older you get, the more of them you go to, and you get quite good at them.
You get quite good at controlling your tears.
Well, no, I don't try to control tears. I think they're better out than in. But I'm not embarrassed. I don't find any conversations difficult. I remembered, because the one on Monday with my cousin Anne, she's the sister of my cousin Bert that I've spent a lot of time with this summer, and I reminded him that in about 1980, how long ago is that? 38 years, nearly 40 years, we went to our first funeral together, which was our granddad's funeral, and we were both in our 20s, and we were both embarrassed because we'd never been to a funeral before. We didn't know how to behave, we didn't know what to say, we didn't know where to look, but you get good at them, unfortunately, because you go, as you get older, you go to more and more of them.
Yes, I suppose it's only a matter of time, isn't it, really?
Well, you haven't lost either parent. I know you're not very close to your mum or anything, but you haven't lost parents, have you? You haven't really, apart from Steve, you haven't really, and obviously he's a big one, you haven't really lost very many people since I've known you.
No, I lost my dad when I was 7, so I didn't really know him at all.
No.
He was in the Navy anyway. And then my nan and granddad, I remember I just had Phoebe and Nelson, so although it was very sad, they were very old, and it wasn't sort of my granddad was a bit unexpected, but they both had good deaths. They both dropped down where they were, which I think is a good death.
I agree with you. I think that's helpful. If you can actually say the person had a good death at the appropriate stage of life, I think that's a win.
Yeah, so do I, because it's this whole lingering on in pain and being drugged up to the eyeballs thing every day that's out of me.
And what happened to your dad when you were 7?
He died of a blood clot. He was a first officer in the Merchant Navy, and he used to stand up motionless for a long time driving the ship. And they know now that it's just as bad to stand up for a long time as it is to sit down for a long time. So
yes, it is.
So yeah. So I've always had it in the back of my head that I would probably go at the same time he did. But it's a bit of a funny story because when I got to how old was I? I must have been about 40. When I got to 41, I was convinced he'd died at 41. So when I got to 41, I was talking to my stepdad and I said, of course, I'm on borrowed time now because Dad died at 41. And he said, Cows died at 31. You're 10 years over it.
Yeah, I remember you telling me that story before. And I do think once you get past the date where your parents died, which I haven't done yet, but it's not far away. I do. And I know people who've done that. I do think that does blow that theory out of the water slightly.
Yeah. I know it's nonsense, but somehow.
And also genetically, you women don't follow their dads, they follow their mums.
Yeah, and she's alive and kicking in holes.
She is, yeah.
Sending checks to grandchildren on a regular basis, bless her.
Oh, good.
Yes, exactly, that's what they say. Another check from grandma.
Oh, good.
Yeah, so anything else about your week?
No, that's it really.
Okay. What's fueled your fire, if anything?
Not very much, but last Saturday I went to the shops, which is a strange old thing for me to do. I couldn't find or decide, and I couldn't wait for online to deliver, and you know that's very quick. I just woke up with an idea, which is my handwriting is so bad, I need to start practicing writing by hand, like we used to do at school. I mean, I have lovely handwriting because at school we used to do these, what were called thin up, thick down exercises where you had, you ended up with this beautiful handwriting. I've got a beautiful fountain pen, but I can barely even sign my own name these days because the manual dexterity to do that has completely gone, because not only do I type everything, but I actually prefer to type everything. I find handwriting too slow, but I thought, right, well, the bee in my bonnet on Saturday was I'm going to get my handwriting back through practice, which I believe you can do. And so I went out and I bought a notebook and a pen that people said was good. And I've started. I haven't done it every day, but I didn't say I would do it every day. And there's no improvements as yet, but I'm doing it. So a bit like, say, yoga, if I keep doing it, it'll improve. And I realized that this is something I could operate in 2019 too. So by and large, I've lost my singing voice and the ability to walk because of my knees, and sleeping, although last night I had a corker of a night, and playing the piano. And I thought, well, I won't do them all at once because that's the way to, ruin any single one of these. But I'm quite liking this idea of getting back skills and talents that I used to have through more regular usage and practice.
So and writing is the first of those. I like the sound of you. I like the sound of the piano playing, regular piano playing.
That is a little way off yet, because A, I'll need a piano, and B, my piano music is in a plastic box in my brother's roof. But that's probably the last one on the list for good reason. I think I could do singing sooner than that, because you can do that with exercises on YouTube and in the car and things. They're almost spiritual practices in a way, because they're slow games.
Yes. And they're things that don't involve the computer, which is always a plus.
Well, interesting. Now I'm telling you that they involve slow games. It's reminding me that I've got a slow cooker in the back of my car that I've never used, and I offered it to my niece. Would you like a slow cooker? Oh, yes, she goes, I'd love it. So I'm going to take it round to her house. And then I thought to myself, and why have you never used that, Judith? And the answer is, I don't really like slow anything.
I absolutely love slow cooked soups and stews. I do,
but I can't be bothered to make them. I'd love to eat them at your house, but I can't be bothered to make them. I'm not a slow bird. I'm a fast bird.
Yeah, I used to do quite a lot more with the first winter I came here, because the oven didn't work very well. It sort of imploded if you went above 140 degrees. So pizza was out of the question, and anything, in fact, in the oven that involved any kind of heat. But this oven's much better, so I'm cooking more in the oven.
I was going to say, speaking of ovens, don't tell my landlord this, but it was so cold yesterday that I turned on all 4 of the gas burners to heat the place up as well as the central heating.
Oh my God.
And I had my thermal underwear, my woolly socks, and several layers, which I never used to wear layers when I was a younger woman, because I used to think they made me look fatter. Now I couldn't give a shit what they made me look like, as long as I'm warm. And then when I saw the snow, I thought, makes sense.
As long as one isn't so bundled. I mean, eight layers makes you feel a bit like Michelin Man.
Well, it does, but actually when you're cold, I don't care.
Yeah, you don't anymore. I don't care about anything anymore.
No. Now, tell me what has fueled your own fire.
Well, I'm in the second week of release and third week of preparation for daily videos. And
Oh, yes.
they're not perfect, but they're going out there, and especially now Sarah's got the grips on the process. I'm very encouraged by the results. I had a look at, we had a Twitter lesson in our local taverna yesterday because the ladies of Right Club are not, one or two are fairly au fait with Twitter, but nobody was particularly skilled with it. And everyone wants to be because, of course, Twitter is where all your literary agents and your publishers are. So, yeah, we had a Twitter thing. And I happened to look at my Twitter profile statistics as taught by you. And I found that my Twitter profile visits, I thought I could just look at my impressions and things like that. But actually, no, I'm going to look at my, things that you can actually might be meaningful. And my Twitter profile visits are up by 54% on last week. Which was really interesting. But now, unfortunately, I've now noticed that you can upload videos natively to Twitter, although if you do share them from YouTube, that people can play them within the Twitter feed. So it doesn't seem really very much point, except that you probably get better reach if you upload them natively, which Sarah's going to groan a lot when I say this to her, because obviously she's, part of my process. So I'm sure she'll be delighted to hear that I'd like to experiment with uploading videos natively to Twitter to see if it has any impact. But so that's that. And the V-zine's back on track again. We had to record and edit 3 episodes in a sort of a week and a half to get us back onto a release schedule that Sarah was happy with. And Phoebe was like, oh my God, another one. But she's managing to come up to speed again quite quickly, and I think she's quite enjoyed it. But the thing I've realised is that it's made me feel a lot more relaxed, because when I don't have a regular schedule of creative output, I'm always thinking, what else can I do? What else can I do? And I realised that having something going out every day, if every other day is good, every day is better, it makes me feel like I'm doing enough. So I've reached a point. I actually brought a little pile of ironing up to do today, because I feel I can do some ironing without feeling like I should be doing some more marketing.
Okay.
So that's fueled my fire. That's a daily, what's it called? A daily output, creative output focus. Yeah. Talking of focus, we're on to your topic of the week.
We are. And when I highlighted it to you over the weekend, I didn't know what I was going to call it, but today I'm going to call it Addicted to Busyness.
Okay.
So it's vaguely about time. It's not so much about managing time, but it's about all aspects of time. What you choose to spend it on, whether or not you realise that's what you're doing. And it was prompted initially by a photo that I shared on Facebook, and you liked it. So I thought, if it resonates with Nicola, that might be a topic for us. And it's by Sharma, and it says, there's a picture of a sort of old-fashioned diary, and it says, show me your schedule and I'll show you your values.
Nice.
Which is quite us, actually, isn't it? But it goes beyond there, because it goes into efficiency, busyness. And it's interesting you make the point about the ironing. Actually, you can, when you feel you've done enough work, when you feel you've been efficient and busy enough, you feel you can take the time to do ironing. But actually, you will discover after this discussion that ironing has a value, a creative value, because it's idle time, and that's what this topic talks about. And it talks about it because I read this article on bigthink.com / I'll give you a link, but I'll just tell you what it is. It says 21st century spirituality, creativity and distraction. And I said to you, I might call this piece something like business and efficiency, or creativity and values, and we'll see what comes out of our conversation. So, are our values appropriately expressed through how we schedule and spend our time, through what we prioritise? We both know, because we've learned this and we're experts in this, we both know, and we've taught our listeners how to manage time. And I've put that in quotes because we've all got the same 24 hours, is what everybody always says. And so you can't actually manage time. You can only choose how you spend those 24 hours. But we know that if we follow the really good principles that we like from people like Stephen Covey and Mark Forster, if we think of ourselves as inefficient people, or using time badly, or needing to be more productive, that we've got tools that we can use. But many people say you can't manage time, and I tend to agree with them. And so this topic isn't that. It's about the disease and the kudos of business, and how space and peace and values such as creativity are more important. And I'm going to give you a few hints from this article, which is, it says, it's entitled "Being Busy is Killing Our Ability to Think Creatively." And it says every time we pick up our phone or we take in more information, it's feeding the disease of busyness. And actually, we like to think of ourselves these days as, we used to like to think of ourselves as busy and efficient businesswomen. But now we like to think of ourselves much more as creative artists and writers. And it's saying that if you want to create valuable output as a thinker, it even quotes Tesla and Einstein in here, you've got to do nothing. You've got to do quite a lot of nothing, because creativity comes through when you're bored.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think of it like a bell curve. I mean, I've been thinking about this quite a lot since you talked about it, and I've read the articles you pointed me at, and I was thinking it's so interesting, because the ironing is a really good example, because I realised right at the beginning of my self-employed career that if I allowed myself to be distracted by household tasks during what I called income-producing activity hours, I would be doing my business at a service. I would be valuing putting in the washing in, doing the ironing above building a business. So,
Nicola, in those days I would have believed you, and I teach some of my clients that still now. It depends where you're at, doesn't it?
Exactly. That's why I was thinking of a bell curve, because I think, as clients come along and they start to become more entrepreneurial, and then they go up this bell curve of, trying to become more efficient, trying to do more things and trying not to get distracted, and all of those things about being more efficient with time, like Stephen Covey teaches us, then I think you reach a point where, which is, for me, is obviously where I've got some output going out at least every other day, where I'm feeling like I'm doing enough, as long as it works, obviously, as long as it's bringing customers. And then you go down the other side of this bell curve where you're actually trying to do less all the time.
Yeah.
And I think that's because you start to value the creativity, and you start to not panic you start to trust the universe a bit more, and you start to realise that the things you do have a cumulative effect. So, once you get past 100 videos on YouTube, and you do X number of blog posts, or you send out a newsletter every week, you're doing enough. You're making enough ripples in the pond to have an effect.
Well,
and,
maybe the point is, quite a lot of those things in your own example are done for you by somebody else.
Well, that's even better.
Well, it is. And therefore, I mean, if Phoebe and Sarah are doing if you're doing the creative content, which you are, and then they're doing the work, and that frees you to spend the afternoon writing, or me doing my handwriting practice, or you doing the ironing, or us just having a think. I've been talking to you for years, haven't I, about, and you say, what do you do when you don't do anything? I always just have a think. I love this. Artists recontextualize reality and offer visions that were previously invisible. Creativity engages the brain's daydreaming mode directly and stimulates the free flow and association of ideas, forging links between concepts and neural modes that might not otherwise be made. This is why going for a drive does it for me, and why I knew I'd be able to think thoughts about funerals on the car drive on the way back. It's, I want space to think, because the stuff that's most important to me comes out of space, not out of busyness.
Very true. And, ironing, driving, swimming. I mean, when I'm in the sea, I can't have any gadgets with me. And I spent a lot of time in the sea on my own this year, and that's where my best ideas for stories come from.
Yeah.
And it's been really interesting for me going from a shift to an efficient, busy person, as you call it, which is whose only creative ideas were ever about my business. Now I'm a writer. I'm trying to become a writer, and I have to write, and you can't write unless I'm finding I can't write if I've got a great long to-do list.
No. So let's go back to Robin Sharma's picture. If you look in your schedule, are your current values reflected in it?
Not yet. As a writer, no, because I'm still putting everything else ahead of the writing. I can't.
As long as it doesn't matter to me if it goes ahead, as long as there's room left over. So if it was mornings business, afternoons writing, that would work for me.
Well, that's what I've been trying to work towards that for about a year now, is not working in the afternoons. And Greece is good because it's 2 hours ahead. So when I want to knock off at 2:00, it's 12:00 in the UK. So basically I can say to people I'm available in the mornings.
Yeah.
And they understand that's up to lunchtime. So and then having an afternoon free is either in the summer for going down the beach and lying on a sunbed and listening or reading or having ideas. Or in the winter, it should be for writing.
Yeah.
But I have to reduce my to-do list, because all the time there's anything on my to-do list, I can't do anything else. I try to keep my to-do list to 3 things every day. That's the maximum I put on the to-do list. And the thing is, when I get this process, this system's going, and I feel like enough is being done, especially when enough is being done by other people, not me, I can then spend the rest of my time in the way that I want to, in a way that isn't an income-producing activity, which writing may be one day, but isn't at the moment.
And that's why I've called it Addicted to Business, because there's a feeling that we should always be doing something.
Yes, there is. Yeah. Because how can you be one of my biggest heroes is Gary Vee. And I know I'm never going to work to the level of Gary Vee, but what Gary Vee says is not to do what he does, but to watch how he does it. Because he is able to switch off. He goes and has holidays with his family. He doesn't touch a gadget. He does have lots of time off. He does sleep well, night to night. But he has all weekends off. He never works weekends unless it's an absolute, extraordinary situation. And you'd think that by following someone like that who advocates hustle, I would be wanting to hustle more. But no, what he says is have really strong boundaries between work and leisure life, and then you can switch off and be perfectly present for what the people, when you've switched off from work. All
right, so here's a good question then. If you looked at your schedule, what values would it tell us that you have?
It would tell us that I'm a determined entrepreneur and an aspiring writer, because I keep putting in time in my diary to write and then taking it out again because it makes me feel stressed. Writing has to be something I do joyfully and spontaneously. If I schedule it, I resist it. But I'm not convinced that's the right way yet.
No. All the writers that we admire don't wait for spontaneity.
No, and that's why...
but if we had space, it's almost like if we schedule some writing, even if it's only, say, an hour or half an hour, and that still leaves the space for the ironing or the noodling. Spontaneity comes from the noodling, the nothingness.
Yeah.
And then you've just got to have the time or the space to be able to go and write it up either now, I think nowish actually, because if I had a spontaneous idea, I'd want to write it now. I don't yet trust myself that I can remember all of the words that I wrote in the middle of the night in my head well enough to get them down on digital paper in the morning.
Yeah. I mean, to be fair, I had Write Club Wednesday afternoons from 2:00 scheduled.
Yeah.
And because we do the podcast once a month, I started scheduling out from the whole day Wednesday.
Yes.
And now I've started scheduling the whole day Wednesday because I want the mornings to be able, and by doing Write Club, we do free writes, we have to write to review each other's work, and the podcast, I have to write to put stuff up on that.
Yeah.
So in some ways I have a whole day a week for writing.
Yes.
But
also,
it's not enough.
I think, no, I know. You want about 50% of it. You want afternoons. I think when you said it reflects that you're a determined businesswoman, that is a good reflection, and it's something one might choose. When we go to your funeral, do you want us to say she was a determined businesswoman?
Yes, I think.
Okay. Would you like us to say anything else? Because here's your chance. That's the point.
That she always had time for younger people.
Okay. But nothing about your creativity or your writing.
Oh, that's interesting, isn't it? I suppose because it's a very new thing for me, I don't yet really think of myself as a writer. I'm more of a writer than I was a year ago. I'm much more of a writer than I was 2 years ago. But I'm not yet a successful writer.
Well, now, hang on. You see, because I put in my passport that I was a coach long before I was earning any decent money at it. Because it was aspirational and it was my next career, and I knew that I was determined, as you said, businesswoman, about making that happen. And you've got this thing which isn't necessarily bad. We've discussed it 2 or 3 times. I don't think it's bad at all. But you've got this thing, I think many of our listeners will relate to this very much, that unless I'm earning money at it, I can't call myself it yet. And unless I'm successful at it, I'm not it.
Well, we have this debate in Write Club all the time.
Oh, how interesting.
Because I'm the only one who cares about the money.
Yes. And it isn't necessarily about money. You didn't use money the first time. So are you saying money is the measurement of whether you're successful as a writer? Because my most writery client doesn't say that. She wants the approbation of her peers. She wants people to go, oh my God, she writes like a dream. That's her goal.
Well, I know, and several of ours want to get published by traditional publishers because they want the they call it the validation of their peers. Yeah.
Okay.
Whereas I actually don't give a toss about the validation of my peers.
No.
I have internal measurement systems, and one of them. It's not that I'm a money. I don't want a lot of money. It's just my way of measuring things.
It's one way of measuring things, Nicola. It's not the only one. I'm just wondering whether if we unhook that at this early stage of your being a fledgling writer, the financial success you seek might come sooner. So, what's the thing about when we find the way to serve the largest number of people, the money will follow? I think the same might apply to your sci-fi. If your goal is that, lots of people read it and love it, then lots of people will buy it.
Well, it's so interesting you say. I've just started a book by a Hugo Award-winning sci-fi writer, and it's so good, Judith. It makes me think I'm never going to be this good, and I never feel like this insecure about anything else.
It wouldn't matter if it took 20 years, though. That's my point.
Oh, it would, because I honestly think that's a complete waste of 20 years.
Well, no, hang on a minute. The thing with writing or any arty type of craft is you get better at it as you do it. And you got me blogging and writing newsletters about 15 years ago, 12 to 15 years ago.
I remember the day.
And Alison Galbraith said to me fairly recently, within the last year, we had a conversation. I said, I think my writing's much better now. She said, yes, it is, because she's been reading it all that time. And at the beginning, she didn't think it was crap. She's just noticed it's got better as it's gone on, because I do it all the time.
Yeah, but I mean, we interview writers on Write Club, and they say, they're on to their sixth novel, and that perhaps it was the sixth one that got published. So the trick is not to labour for 20 years over one; it's just to keep writing.
Keep going, absolutely. Yeah. And I think Dan Brown, what was the famous Dan Brown one? It was about his third, and then we went back and bought the ones and started from the beginning. Yeah,
it was Da Vinci Code.
Yes, that wasn't his first book.
Yeah, see, I'm astonished when I hear that, because I think it's so hard to write a book. It's so hard. It's the hardest thing I've ever done. And then to write one and it not get published, then write another one and not get published, then write another one.
Well, I think they got published. They just didn't get. Nobody thought they were any good.
Just getting published is a major breakthrough for anyone.
Yes.
It's like the record industry, Sony only signs 3 new acts a year. A publishing company only takes on about 3 new.
So why have you picked something so hard?
Because the people who do it here are fun, and it felt like an interesting challenge. And all of those reasons, and I still do it because it's fun. Because really, being a writer is the hardest thing I've ever done. Does
that make it the most valuable then?
No, it doesn't make it the most valuable. It just makes it something that I constantly question. Do I really want to become a writer, or do I want to spend the time reading fabulous other books? Every day.
I don't think they're mutually exclusive.
No, I mean, I do read a lot of.
Yeah.
Anyway, it's interesting that it's the hardest thing I've ever done. I'm not about to give up, because I'm 20,000 words in. I'm not going to give up. I'm fifth of the way there.
We've had this conversation before. We wouldn't want everything to be hard, but I think some hard things are valuable.
And the other thing about creativity, which we're getting off the topic a bit here, but the other thing about creativity is it's so subjective. So, I might think, I don't know whether the writers that I read and I think, oh my God, they're so good. I don't know whether they think they're that good, or they probably just think,
Oh, I bet they don't. I bet they're riddled with anxiety.
Yeah, it's a very subjective and insecure.
Well, I think it's not alone. You're not alone. Any artist of any creative genre, and I would include a chef in that offers themselves on a plate, on a page, on a canvas, you're opening, or on a disc, you're opening yourself up to other people having opinions about it. And most of other people's opinions, for instance, you've seen this week where Cheryl was on the X Factor and everybody's been very mean about it. And I'm reading the press and I'm thinking, oh, I wonder what she's done to offend people, because even her fans are slagging her off. And she's clearly quite upset about it. It must be grim to be constantly chasing the approval of the buying public.
Yeah, her thighs alone should have got her through that. She looked fantastic. I mean, it wasn't my cup of tea, the song, but it was actually very Cheryl-like. In a way, Cheryl is suffering the same problems that Kylie Minogue, who is now being venerated as an industry veteran, it suffered because she sticks to pop and doesn't get any more meaningful than that. As she's getting older, it's becoming less appropriate in a way. But then, having said that, Kylie still rattles out a good pop song. Nobody moans about that. I think Kylie's, anyway, we're again totally getting off.
I don't think this is off the point, to be honest with you, because actually the big think piece is about creativity, and these are creative people, and we're maybe straying into the territory of is that harder for a woman. But I was just opening up my diary to see if I could see what my diary told me, which is, my clients are very important to me, and being there for them is important to me. And if I can avoid letting them down, I always will. But there's plenty of time in there for writing. Yesterday, newsletter. Today, I'll be writing 4 pieces of content after we've done this. Tomorrow, it says day off, although I do have a client meeting in the afternoon. My time off is important to me and appears in the diary every week. So I've got 3 focuses, really, which is clients, time off, and content creation.
I've just had a minor breakthrough.
Oh, good.
As we're talking, I've realised that my definition of success has always been an empty diary. And the fewer appointments in there, the better. And so that's why I'm so reluctant to put in my leisure time and my time off, because it makes me feel like it's something I have to do, and I resist things.
I kind of go whoopee. So for instance, today we'll talk for an hour. I'll spend 2 hours writing up the bits. I've got a client at 2:00, and then whoopee, it's my time.
But okay, so can I ask you, in your diary, does it say from 2 p.m. onwards, is there an actual appointment saying time off?
Not today. If it's empty, it's mine. But to Fridays, I put day off, because otherwise I let things creep in there, and I try to keep them sacrosanct.
Okay. See, I keep swerving backwards and forwards on this. I should put in writing time as something, so nothing else can creep in there.
Yeah, I think so. And do you use, is yours colour coded?
Yes.
Yes, like it always was when you used to teach people how to do it on a Filofax page. Then have a lovely colour. Have your favourite colour for whoopee time.
Yeah, well, unfortunately, Google Calendar doesn't give you that many colour choices. So I'm a little bit on that. But yes, I'm going to have to, aren't I? Because unless I remind myself that Monday is supposed to be a writing day, it's not going to happen, is it?
Well, you could do it for a bit. You don't need to do it forever. I think that, I try to stack my appointments up in the morning. Generally my client time is at 2:00 and 3:00 in the afternoon. Sometimes, if my morning's short, I try and invite would my clients like to go a bit earlier. But I'm getting quite good at just sort of snatching an hour or 2 in the middle of the day. It's equally important to me. It's quite hard to, I've realised in this conversation, I'm in a different place in my life. It's because I was never, when I was an accountant, there was never any time left over for me. That's why I sold the business in the end. And initially with coaching, and whenever I've had my gap year and I'm coming up for another one of those, it's because you feel full up with your responsibilities to other people. I've called this addicted to business, but what we've ended up talking about is whoopee time, which is like when we can be like 3 children in the summer holidays. We just go off on your bike and you go downhill and you take your legs off the pedals and you go wee down the hill.
Endless days where
yes.
Cycle or ride.
Yeah, and they've got to have balance, those two sides. I hate that word. Like scales, they're equal weight. And the point of this article and this thinking is, particularly for our clients whose business is in the creative fields, is that they've got to be balanced, because if you don't make enough emptiness, there's no creativity in the creative bits.
But the other thing I realised, I took a month off in the summer that turned into 3 from my marketing, and it's been so hard to bring it back up to speed.
Yeah, and that's why I think you're anxious about this, because, once we're on the horse, it's easy to keep going.
Yeah.
When we got off, it was difficult to get back on. It's the same with the low carb. Once you fall off, it's difficult to get back on, or we think it is. These things are just mental constructs, aren't they, really?
Yeah, it's all in your mind.
We make it up. Yeah, we do. Yeah. But I think it's good thinking to be having, and I think to be encouraging the listener to have, which is, does my schedule reflect my values? That
is just what I've written at the top of this section in my diary. in very bad handwriting. No, but at least I can read it. And it says values versus time spent. And I think that's the most important thing that should come out of this discussion. Do the things you spend your time on doing reflect your values, what you care about, what you say is important, because if they don't, then you're living inauthentically.
And also values sometimes turns into a jargon word where it's time spent is more plain English. Values turns into a jargon word where you think, oh yeah, values, I must try and spend some time trying to work out what my values are. As much as anything, it's what's important to you. And it explains why people never get around to, particularly women, I think, although not exclusively, when I've met my needs to my clients and my family, and if there's any time left, I'll do what's important to me. And my job often with clients is, oh, sod all of that. Can you just go to the place where you do the creative work and do the creative work?
Yeah. And when it comes to marketing, if clients, people say, this has been a recurring theme the last few weeks, is when my clients say to me, well, nothing's happening. And I say, well, what have you done to make something happen? And if you're putting anything else above that those activities, your values of having a successful business are not being reflected in what you're spending your time on, which is really important, especially in the early part of the bell curve.
Yeah.
You get to coast downhill later.
Yes.
So are we done on that one?
I think we are.
It was good. I enjoyed that. What's your word of the week then?
Well, my favourite TV programme of the week is Madam Secretary. Do you watch Madam Secretary?
I love it. Is it back on?
Well, it depends where you are in the world, obviously, but it's always on for me. If it's on in America, it's always on for me. Let's leave it at that. But she has not only is it wonderful that, Madam Secretary in the US in this fictional thing is a woman, but she has a very sexy husband, I think we'll agree. And what's mostly sexy about him, apart from the way they look, is that what he does for a living. He's an ethics professor. Honestly, if I sat next to a man at dinner and he said he was an ethics professor, I would just pass out with delight. And he's brilliant at sort of debating. They take the mickey out of him, of course, because, he always takes everything back to centuries old thinkers and everything, and religious people and so forth. But in this week's episode, my word is humility, because this week's episode was about Japanese peace gardens and about how the Japanese were devastated after the Second World War and how they're taking these peace gardens around the world. And there was one in Washington and she had to go and make a speech, and her PA had to work out how they were going to fund the garden maintenance for 50 years. Because there's always a bit of humour in there as well. But Dr. whatever his name is said, humility makes space for new possibilities. And what he was saying was, when the Japanese were humbled in the Second World War and they had to start again from nothing, that was what created possibilities. And interesting, it talks about making space. Humility makes space for new possibilities, and that's exactly what we talked about in our focus. It's making space for new possibilities. So my word of the week is humility.
Oh, nice. Just incidentally, one of our favourite tavernas, Melissa's, one of the busiest tavernas, with one of the busiest waiters called Nico, he rakes the gravel every morning into, not into shapes, but into beautiful lines. And it's when you walk in, it makes you think, oh, this is nice.
Yeah.
Just over all this lovely, beautifully neat gravel.
So like a sort of Japanese Zen garden?
Yes. He rakes the gravel every morning. It's a way of getting rid of all the leaves and cigarette butts.
Yes, and grubbiness. Yeah.
It just, when you walk in, it just makes you feel peaceful and calm and like you're going to have a nice meal.
Well, it's a sort of monastic activity, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, and he's the least likely person to do it, but he obviously gets some pleasure out of it because it's done every day.
Yeah.
Okay, my word is cooking. I have been watching MasterChef Professionals, and I did a bit of James Martin at the weekend as well, which led me to go down to Katerina's pretty much only supermarket and say, have you got a shoulder of lamb? Which is not easy to say in Greek, I can tell you. Involved lots of gesturing and patting myself on the shoulder. And I did cook it. And he tried to chop it into pieces because he obviously realises I'm a woman on my own, but I wanted the whole thing so that I could then make soup from it. But cooking is my thing. I'm truly trying every day to go and make myself a nice dinner.
And like ironing, of course, that's a creative space.
Exactly. Yes, I find it very creative. I love watching MasterChef in any form, but the Professionals are particularly good.
Mm.
Project updates then. What are you up to?
I should just say before we go on that all versions of MasterChef, but mainly MasterChef The Professionals, is Marion's favourite television programme, and she saves them up and watches. You get 3 episodes a week or something?
Yeah, I don't know.
I can't be doing with that anymore. I get very bored very quickly with things like that, and I have enjoyed it in the past, but you couldn't force me to watch it now, to be honest.
So, what's your project updates then?
I've written here none, and I'm glad for it, because to be honest with you, Nicola, it's taking all my energy right now just to keep my stuff together.
Yeah.
Illness and death and cold. That's about all I can cope with, to be honest. I haven't got any space for any new, and as I said last week, I'm very aware I'm walking downhill to the end of the year.
Yeah, well, I'll let you off. You can have a project updates holiday for the next year.
Thank you. I mean, I don't feel the need to create project updates or projects or updates, to be honest, but if I've got anything to tell you in this section, I will, and if I'm not doing it, again, on today's focus, I'm leaving space.
Yeah. Don't have to be new projects, do they? Just be updates.
I haven't really got any old projects either, really.
Okay. Well, in the spirit of what we've just been talking about, I am so cross with myself that I got sick in the first week of NaNoWriMo, and it seems like such an enormous mountain to climb now to write something like 15 to 20,000 words to catch up. I've enrolled myself in a 6-week creative writing course in January. Have I told you this before?
No.
I looked back through my notes to make sure I hadn't,
Good
but
girl.
I couldn't remember if I had or not. So I'm joining Curtis Brown Creative Writing class, Write to the End of Your Novel, it's called. There's 3 classes. There's write the first 15,000 words, write to the end of your novel, and the third class is edit and pitch. So I might go on to that. And I'm really looking forward to it because the 6th module, there's lots of video and lots of interactive stuff and lots of sharing your work. And I'm a bit of a girly swat, and I like to be a good student, as it were. So I know it will keep me accountable. But the last module looks great fun, and no wonder they've saved it for last. It's writing sex and violence. And as I've got to write some fight scenes, and I'm a little bit unsure about them, I have already written my first sex scene, which was a bit of a hurdle, and it wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be, mainly because I cut out the middle bit and then just anyway, I won't go into too much detail. But the violence class I'm looking forward to because I want to know how to write, because I've never ever been in a fight in my life. I mean, I think I might have had one tiny playground scuffle when I was about 7 or 8, but I don't remember any fisticuffs or anything. I always managed to talk my way out of fights because I had a very large vocabulary and people used to find that amusing. So I diffuse the bullies with talking at them. So how I'm going to write a violent scene, I don't know, but there's got to be several in this book. So
when you say there's got to be, why have there got to be?
Because my heroine is going back in time to various situations, and she's simultaneously trying to save someone from something, and there is an ancient unstoppable evil, although as someone pointed out to me, what's the point of having it if it's unstoppable, because you won't be able to stop it. I tell you, this writing makes me laugh so much. So yes, I want to know, because she's going to have some fight scenes.
I tell you who fought well was, I've forgotten the girl with the dragon tattoo in the trilogy. What was her name? She had a funny little name.
Leander?
No, a funny little name like Noah or Nula or something, wasn't it, her name? Anyway, whatever. She did fight. She fought. People say fight like a girl. Well, she was a girl who fought proper.
Yeah, well, she'd had training, hadn't she?
Yes.
So
I've never been in a fight, and I'm finding it quite strange to be in a conversation about whether or not I've ever been in a fight, to be honest. It's like, I'm a nice girl, me. I don't do fighting.
I know, but there's a video going around on Facebook that shows girls how to fight if they're, attacked. And
if I wasn't 63, if I was 16, I think I'd want to learn how to fight because times are much harder now.
Well, are they really?
Yes, they are. When I see girls, learning martial arts and things, I think, rock on.
Yeah, good for you. Absolutely. Yeah. But I mean, I think girls should always have been taught that. I don't think it's any more. I don't think times are any tougher now, but I think it's.
Well, I don't know when you last looked at the news, but in London, knife crime is a problem.
Oh.
Something like 167 people have been murdered, young people.
I don't know if you could fight back against a knife, though.
I bet you can. I bet you can be taught how to, I mean, if we read Jack Reacher, he knows how to avoid a knife, doesn't he?
He does, yes. Yeah. He doesn't mind taking on 6 thugs with knives and guns.
No. And so then he learnt, the army taught him that, presumably, you see?
So there you go. So there's fight scenes in these books. And
yes.
They don't go on they're quite, swift and decisive, Jack Reacher's fights, aren't they?
I like him dispatching villains by the handful, yes.
Yeah, so do I. I love that. So I want some of that in my books, but I need to be able to learn how to write it well.
Okay.
I have no personal experience.
Okay.
That was a strange departure for us, wasn't
Yeah, it was.
But who or what's impressed in the meantime?
Oh, well, I think you're going to like this. It's not. I was scraping the bottom of the barrel here. I mean, the thing I've come up with isn't from the bottom of the barrel, but nothing is the answer. Nobody or nothing's impressed or inspired me this week in a week of funerals and deaths. But Nicola Semple, who's a client and a listener and a podcaster, sent me a little private message on Saturday morning. It says something, I think you'll like this. She goes, I haven't binge watched it. I've just watched the first 2 episodes. And basically she was saying, don't binge watch it. But I did binge watch it last weekend. It's on Netflix. 8 funny, sad little shows about funerals and deaths called the Kaminsky Method, starring Michael Douglas, where he's a washed-up old actor teaching other people to act well, and his best friend's wife dies of cancer, and then they have her funeral, and then how are they dating in there. What I like about it, not only is it's funny, it's like real life and it's bittersweet, and it has matched what my week's been about, but there's been this debate this week about actors who do and don't adapt to the small screen. And if you've got a big screen career, you probably wouldn't go to Netflix. So I don't think Michael Douglas has really got a big screen career anymore. And so actually when you bow to the inevitable and go, well, I might as well work, and here's a great funny script on Netflix, I'd be in like Flynn if I was him and somebody offered me that.
Yeah, I know. That was one of the reasons they said that what's his name didn't want to do Jack.
Yes, and he's right. If I was Tom Cruise, I wouldn't be going to Netflix, but if I was Michael Douglas, I would be going to Netflix. That's the difference. But the point is, here's a program I think you'll like. It's got some nice Jewish humour in it as well. 2 old men. It's like Grace and Frankie with 2 old geezers in it.
Oh, good, because I quite like Grace and Frankie, but it was a little bit contrived for me.
Well, also, Grace and Frankie had a couple of old geezers in it as well, the gay husbands. I thought they were very sweet, and this is funny. You tend to like blokey stuff more than you like girly stuff in every area of your life, actually. I think you'll like this. It's funny, and it's funny. It's about... I'm a little bit older than you. Maybe I would find it a bit funnier because it's about old people behaving badly, basically.
Well, I wrote it down and I'm going to add it to my list. So,
you'll know, and they're comedies, so they're half an hour, not an hour. So you'll know in half an hour whether you're going to like to watch all 8 or not. But I watched all 8 on the weekend and I loved it.
Oh, very nice. Something to look forward to.
Yeah.
I'm now able to watch more Netflix. This is something, talking of age, because I wasn't able to watch it on the telly before because I couldn't hear the conversation very well. It wasn't the telly sound wasn't good enough. So now I've started watching it from my laptop, projecting to the telly with my boom speaker, which is a lot more subtle and picks up a lot more conversation. So I'm able to enjoy Netflix again now.
You're a bit mutt. I've said that before. A bit mutt and Jeff.
Mutt and Jeff, yeah.
You are.
Can't help it, but I won't give in to a hearing aid just yet. So what's impressed me this week, well, I've already mentioned it, it's a book called The Fifth Season. And it's a Hugo Award-winning novel, not a debut novel, because she's written several since. And I'm...
When you say she?
Yes.
Who?
N.K., I'm just about to tell you. N.K. Jemisin. Jemisin. And the reason I picked up on it was because I started looking at I thought I got to read good sci-fi, and now Ian Banks has died, I need some other authors. So I started looking at, who'd won the Hugo Awards and the Nebula Awards, because they're the 2 biggest sort of sci-fi awards. And I picked up on The Fifth Season, bought it on Kindle a while ago, and then just started it the other day, and immediately I loved it. And it's interesting because I'm wrangling with this whole thing of how do authors create worlds in our minds. And every book I've ever thought was brilliant, I'm going back and looking at it now to see how the author does it. And we interviewed Peter Flannery a couple of weeks ago, and he's a fantasy writer. And he says what you do is you plant little hooks. So you say to people things like, they entered the wizard's workshop. And the wizard's workshop, immediately you know exactly what it looks like. So your brain does the work. And it's only really when you're describing things that people wouldn't know what they look like that you have to go into more depth and detail. So that's an interesting thing. And I'm Michael Marshall Smith, one of my favourite recent authors. I went back and tried to read some of his books looking for his descriptions, and there are none. So he's doing a really good job of making my brain do the work on painting the world picture. And The Fifth Season is very good for that. So if you want a nice, deep-textured, multi-layered complex charactered, well-drawn world sci-fi book, the 5th season is for you.
And it's funny you should say that, because actually it's one of the things I like best about writing is that I can use my imagination.
What, when you're writing?
Well, I don't know. No, reading. I beg your pardon. I don't want to have everything explained to me.
No, it's
in fact, my current favourite one is Harry Bosch, who I read dozens and dozens of novels and assumed he was black. It was only when the television programme came along that I realised he wasn't.
I must start watching him again, because I did enjoy I think they've cast that character really well on Netflix.
I'm not convinced, actually.
Oh, okay.
I mean, I think he does a good job, but he's not what was in my mind's eye. Well, obviously he wasn't. He was black in my mind's eye. There you go.
You got the colour completely wrong.
Yeah, it didn't matter. It was because it was to do with the fact that he'd fought in. It was all the descriptions in the early ones about fighting in the trenches in the Korean War. I don't know why I just saw him as black. I did. Oh, and also, I think being an LA cop, I think often you might be black in that role as well. I don't know.
Well, we could have a conversation all about that, but we won't. No. So, lovely. That's us done this week.
It is. Yes. See you next week.
See you next week indeed.
Okay. Bye.
How do they do it? Not a care and suffering. Wanna step into their world.
You've been listening to Nicola Cairncross and Judith Morgan. The podcast is called Own It, Your Business and Your Life. Do come and visit us at ownitthepodcast.com. We love to hear your feedback. You can find out more about Judith and visit her on her website at judithmorgan.com, and you can find Nicola at nicolacairncross.com.